Welcome, Fran and Joe, to my YouTube channel. These beautiful humans were recommended to me by somebody that follows me on Instagram. And once I get to know a little bit about their story, I was just delighted to have them on my channel. I know they were recently on Wendy Renee's channel, but you know what? I'm the more the merrier here on my channel. So I'm just really excited to have you, Fran and Joe, here. And I love that you're wearing your XJW buttons, which is like you're already preaching the word of, as you said, unwitnessing people. So go ahead, Fran. I'm just going to ask you right away, you and Joe, how did the Jehovah's Witnesses, I love it. How did the Jehovah's Witnesses come into your life?
Go ahead.
1985. Well, we were searching. We were looking to learn the Bible and also to do charity. So we had been searching. We searched the Amish. We figured now it's not the Amish. And so one day we got a knock on the door. Joe was home, and it was a Saturday. It was a pioneer and a young person. And Joe had questions, so they answered the questions from the Bible. I wasn't home at the time, but then I came home and I didn't know what was going on. Somebody was in our driveway, but anyway. So basically, we were interested in what they had to say.
Yeah, the fact that we were searching, we wanted more Bible for the family, and but like Fran said, we were looking for an opportunity to do charity work, to volunteer. So that was the biggest motivation. But they were answering questions from the Bible, so that meant a lot. That did.
Wonderful. And then that led you into the organization. So now you can just share your story of being a witness.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things, it was the time of the memorial. So Jeff, who was the pioneer who was just out of Bethel, young man, said the most important gathering for Christians was the memorial. And so I said, well, if that's the most important gathering for Christians, we'll go. He was showing us from the Bible, so I said, let's approach this. And so we did. The whole family did. An interesting thing, when we got there, it looked like Easter Sunday. If you know what Easter Sunday is, everybody is dressed in their brand new whatever. And it's like, oh my goodness, I wasn't quite prepared for this pageant. But at any rate, I said, well, and you were kind of concerned. And I said, look, if they're that concerned about our clothing and appearance, they'll tell us something. But they apparently weren't. We're love bombed on the way in.
Yeah, a whole family coming in, 3 children.
Yeah, it was like
like 4.5 and under, and I was pregnant for the 4th one.
Yeah.
So yeah, they love bombed us.
Yeah. And you know, they were the person who did was a very nice person. We were good friends with them.
All very nice. All very nice.
Yeah.
So we went to the memorial, and they told us that there was a Sunday meeting, so we went to the Sunday meeting. And then Joe said, well, I don't know, maybe we'll go like every other week. So we missed a Sunday, and Joe was working on the car and I was taking care of the kids. And I said, oh man, we could be at that meeting. So Joe said, well, all right. He didn't really want to go.
I really didn't. I wasn't interested in joining a group like that. At any rate, I said, well, previous, it's like, well, we can go every other week. You know, I was going to compromise, but
I was the one that wanted to go to meetings. I regret it now.
Wow,
at the time, it seemed like, really nice families, a place to raise our children.
Yeah, we were looking for families. In other words, our family with their families. That was the motivation. So at any rate, we did go to the meeting.
And then what else? Go ahead.
Well, and that first meeting Sunday, we, observed. We were there for the meeting. At the end of the meeting, the special pioneer elder, he was the Kobe or whatever at that point, asked me how I liked the meeting. I said, well, it's all very interesting. And I said, and he asked, well, were you planning on attending? I said, well, we were thinking about changing our location. We were actually looking to change it because it was cold where we were living up here in the north. And I was having difficulties at the time of the cold. So we were looking at changing our climate. And the elder kind of looked me off and um, squared off in front of me. She said, well, maybe you can change your attitude. And it's like, oh, geez. And it's like,
Should have known right
basically, I
there.
restrained myself. But that was almost like foreshadowing in the novel. In other words, about what it's going to be like as you proceed. But I didn't quite know that at the time. But at any rate, said, fair enough. I can change my attitude. I mean, I was an open individual, and I understood that. Said, okay, we'll try. We'll see. Let's just see. Thinking of my family, the children, families involvement. Let's see what this is all
And
about.
our marriage wasn't very good at that point, so we thought, well, maybe this is something that can help our marriage.
Yeah. You know, we both came out of the 70s, the product of the 70s, which was kind of a turbulent, changing kind of transitionary time for people and roles and this and that and the other thing. So, you know, it was a time of difficulty for that. But at any rate, we proceeded on.
Yep. And we got fully involved.
Fully involved.
Going to the quick builds, pioneering. Our children ended up all being pioneers. They learned a foreign language. I mean, we love our family. They're really sweet individuals, but of course they're going to obey the organization if their parents decide to change.
Well,
So I'm going to backtrack you because now we're heading toward like a little bit of where you are now. But as the kids were growing up, they, as you said, they pioneered. Joe, did you end up climbing the JW ladder, so to speak? Did you become a ministerial servant, an elder?
Very little, very little. I wasn't so motivated to do that. I always enjoyed helping and assisting and making things happen. I always enjoyed whatever we did before. The thing that bothered me even early on is whatever education I had before, it was with business and corporations. So I knew what corporations were all about, business and marketing. And then also I had background in counseling, you know, humanistic training. And it's like, it was so corporate. It struck me as being so incredibly corporate and businesslike, not as much as humanistic or religion type of organization that I was expecting it should have been. So that kind of bothered me at first because they seemed like way too corporate for my pleasure. So I really didn't go too far out of my way to try to climb, so to speak. I became a ministerial servant only because there are things that I could do to be helpful and make up things function. But as far as elder, I started from early on seeing that the role of elder, rather than being like loving shepherds, which they professed themselves to be so heavily, they really were more like policemen. They were corporate enforcers. So it's like something at that point I realized something wasn't true to story in the organization. So I had a difficult time really forming close relationships with a lot of them because of that culture. It's like I just didn't connect with that kind of corporate culture in a supposedly religious setting. Didn't make sense. Yeah.
Okay, that totally makes sense. And Fran, I knew you were a teacher. So were you trying to pioneer during the summer months with your kids?
So anyway, I stopped teaching secularly when we got married. We started out self-employed, so we were pretty flexible. But during the summer vacation, I would pioneer with the kids. So they always had that desire to pioneer. Our oldest son went to Bethel. Our youngest son did temporary work at Bethel. They worked on a lot of projects. They all learned a second language. They all lived in a foreign country. So, we did a good job raising them as JWs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that leads me down the path of now they're grown. They ended up getting married, all of them, to other Jehovah's Witnesses, and as you said earlier, they're all very close in age, within 5 years of age. Your youngest one being now 35, you said 37, 38. The oldest one being 43, because you said it was my age.
Yeah.
Which
80,
is
82, 84, and 85. They were born.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then that leads us to the path of, when did you guys start waking up, and what was that process like for you guys?
It was
First of
only
all,
2 years ago.
Okay, so it was during the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah, personally,
Yeah, for Joe.
I never, how do I want to say this?
You probably
I was always skeptical. I mean, sure, there were times where I felt that what was happening was good, but then I saw things as they made changes. It really it troubled me. In other words, these big changes.
You mean the new light? The new light?
Oh, everything changing, the quote unquote new light, trying to spin things in whatever direction they wanted to spin them. And it's like, these guys are too slick. They're slick marketers is all there was to it.
Joe was probably always a Pino.
Yeah, always. Yeah.
Even though he pioneered and supported the family and went to all the meetings, there was never a question whether or not we're going to go out in service.
Non-negotiable.
We were always out in service every Saturday, every holiday.
And Vivian, the biggest thing that I regret is that I took on the fear that they were trying to inculcate in us. And I transmitted that fear onto the family.
Like the Armageddon fear.
Unfortunately, I was susceptible to that. Not so much for me, but my children. In other words, it was a concern that I had for them. And I pressured them in ways I totally regret. Totally.
We were very strict with them.
I made mistakes as far as that goes. As far as I would have been a totally different father. I would have been a totally different father otherwise. Totally different. So I kind of resent.
You did exactly what the organization wanted you to do, because we were under their manipulation, and you were being a very good head in the family. So in my opinion, you did no wrong. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. In fact, you were an exemplary father and husband in the family. So I just
for them,
but I understand now. You see it in a different light, but I just want you to know, like, I see that it still holds something against you, and I understand that that's really heavy to carry, but I just want to say that that's something that you were doing the thing that you knew how to do at the time, and you did the best you could, and it sounds like you did a fantastic job as a Jehovah's Witness father and provider and husband.
And see, that's the cautionary tale that we want to help others to realize, is that when Joseph Rutherford said that religion is a snare and a racket, that was the only truth that ever came out of that organization. And it was very, very true. It ensnared, because, a snare is something that an animal goes into because it's looking for something good, food or something like that. But unfortunately, it gets trapped, and then it becomes food. That's what a snare is. So it worked. It worked as a snare. And so once I realized that, it's like, oh boy, this is not good.
But it was actually during the pandemic, because we were home, we were on Zoom, and then watching the broadcast and the updates during the vaccine, it just got worse and worse. It didn't make sense. Started questioning things, and
well, there were so many things even before the pandemic. A few years, one of the friends, sisters, has five children, and she was concerned about not giving money to the organization because of the funds going toward paying off lawsuits for pedophilia. And I thought, Oh, that was totally a shock to me.
Yeah, we had no
I
idea.
never a concern. I wasn't concerned or had any thoughts of that at all. It's like, oh my goodness. And why would you say that?
Mhm,
Well, we kind of shelved that until
mhm.
we started seeing the broadcasts with the governing individuals front and center. And at that point, I was just saying something's very wrong here. The style that they were presenting themselves
Mhm.
just was sent up all sorts of alarms to me.
Yeah, because we started in 85, and that's when, well, you don't know
We
who the
never even
governing
knew the
body
governing body.
is. Maybe they were at a convention.
Oh, there was never even a mention of it.
And well,
Very
France
little.
was the
Oh,
first one we
sure.
saw, but no, it was
Oh,
not
they
the
were in the background.
spotlight. Yeah, it
No,
was not. And now they're front and center.
Hollywood.
And
No,
Joe
it's
said, I
Hollywood.
can't stand watching them. He
It,
couldn't, it made him
you know,
sick,
to
literally.
me, it was like having to subject myself to a very slimy used car salesman all day. And it's like, I don't want to have any part of this. And that's all I could see when I saw them.
Mhm.
That's all I could see. And at that point, I said, I've got to check out more about this organization. Previous to that, I didn't,
Yeah.
because we were forbidden to, if you do any checking, you're an apostate. And if you talk about with the other person, you're causing division. So it's like, okay, I won't do it. But then when I saw that started to happen, I said, no, I've got to check. I've got to start checking.
So that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
He went online. I was out in service, so he was home alone. And when I came home, he said, there's something I want you to see. And I could tell by his voice. I said, no, I don't want to see it, And so we ended up having an argument. And Joe said,
No,
in wisdom, he said, it's not going to go well for us if you don't, because like I said, early on, we had marital problems, and now we were, much, much better. And he said, if you don't look at this, it's not going to go well for us. So I thought about it. So the next day I said, okay, show me, let me see what you found. And he did. But at first it didn't really mean anything to me. And then about a week later, we both watched the Australian Royal Commission, and that was it. That was it. As a mother, and seeing that and not knowing that was going on. So the first thing we did was we told our children about it, and they said, "Oh no, it's a lie. You can't believe it. It's on the internet." We said, "Wait a minute. This is not put out by apostates. This is a documentary. It's like watching 60 Minutes in this country." So anything we said, we went to the elders. They said the same thing. It's all a lie.
Well,
it would never happen here.
And back to the elder who, that special pioneer who shoehorned us into the congregation. I went to him because he was a key figure in all of our theocratic life with the family and everything.
He went on to be a CO.
And everything. I mean, in fact, I think he was even part of spearheading the cart work.
He was
starting in New York City.
Yeah,
he was behind.
He was part of that.
Well, at any rate, so I go to him, and then he said, "Well, he knew that was taking place." And he said, "Well, they're getting control of it." And I told him, I said, "I'm really not convinced of that." And he didn't like that I wasn't, able to be convinced of that. And basically he said, "You're sounding like an apostate." And it's like, well, what's the difference? What I'm sounding like, it's what's taking place. See, and the problem is his father, who brought them into the truth, was around the time of Ray France when Crisis of Conscience came out. And his father and brother and uncle also left because of that. And so he, at that point, he basically his hatred for his father. And I was the one in position to take that same kind of hatred for what we were doing. So immediately he contacts our children and indicates to them that we're dangerous. So the shunning started. The shunning started before anything happened, all because we were whistleblowers. We're whistleblowers.
And questioning.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it was downhill at that point. It was downhill.
So it was during the pandemic. So two elders talked to us on Zoom. We had a couple meetings, and they could tell that we were not convinced that this,
No way.
what they were saying.
No.
So they did a, rather than a marking talk, they called it a warning talk. And they did it on Zoom. And of course, they didn't mention our names. And we're listening because at that point we were still listening to, and I go, Joe, they're talking about us. But the funny thing was is that they are explaining to the congregation what a PIMO is. Now he said, now there's something called PIMO. It means physically in, mentally out. And he's going through this whole thing. And you don't have, if you feel uncomfortable being around someone who's questioning, you don't have to have them over to your house. You don't have to have any, interchange with them, social.
So basically he was illustrating to them how many in the congregation, whoever is probably PIMO, they probably didn't realize this until he says, they're probably in the audience saying, oh, that's me.
they're getting an education.
I said, that's fabulous what they're doing. It's true, because the friends would never have heard that otherwise. They would never have heard PIMO unless they were online, in room looking for things they shouldn't have been looking for. So here we kind of help them insert it into the congregation.
So right away they started soft shunning us, and then as soon as we stopped going to meetings and stopped going in service, that was it. That was it. They hard shunned us, and we weren't disassociated.
No. Well, the first thing we did, because I wasn't interested in them mentioning our names in the congregation, because I knew they would have been very soon. So we crafted a letter and had it sent from a lawyer. He paid to actually have it come from his office. And basically I said, we do not want our name mentioned. And if it is, we'll take whatever legal action we can against anyone that does.
So they didn't bother us.
Didn't bother us.
Not at all.
For that time being.
Yeah. But at one point we wanted to become vocal. And there was a radio person that we knew that we were in touch with right from the time that we spoke with the lawyer. And he said, do you want to come on the program? We said, no, not yet, because we don't want our family, to bring anything on them.
We still wanted to see if we can, what we could do with the family, how they were connected, where they were standing on it.
Yeah.
But it's turning out that, well, one of our daughters made sure by asking Fran the question one day, or us.
No, you. Well, both of us.
Yeah. That question. Go ahead, you remember.
Oh yeah, she was on the phone because it was during her pioneer school, and she says, she knew we had been talking bad about the governing body, and she says, there's just one thing bothering me. I go, well, what is it? And she says, well, do you believe that the governing body is God's spirit anointed on the earth? And both of us right away, we said it together. We said, no. And she goes, well, I won't be able to associate with you. So that was back in August of 2022. And she kept to her word. We have not heard one thing from her. And then slowly the rest of the family shunned us. So we said, everybody's shunning us. What do we have to lose? So we said, right after that the bombing in Germany, what happened at the Kingdom Hall, we told the radio announcer about it. He says, yeah, I heard about it. He says, are you ready to come on now? We go, yes. Now we're ready.
So what we did at that point I said, okay, now we want to make it known. And so I sent a postcard, not even a letter, a postcard to the congregation stating that we give you permission to announce our name, and we request that you announce our name.
That you tell them that Joe and Fran Guerino are no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, our son-in-law is an elder in the congregation. And the two elders that have been in contact with us, that right away we hadn't heard from them in months.
That unglued them.
We want to have a meeting. We want to talk. We said, no, that's not necessary. So our son-in-law, who we had not seen in months, came over. And I said, Joe, Jeremy's here.
It's like, who? No, because they had been being standoffish until we sent that postcard.
And he said he came over because he wanted to hear it from each one of us, because I think he was afraid that like Joe was putting me up to it.
Yeah.
And I looked him in the eyes and I said, Jeremy, I said, I cannot support any organization that hides child sexual abuse. And his response was, well, I never did. I said, Jeremy, you may not have. I said, but this is a worldwide problem. It's bigger than you. And he didn't have anything to say. And then he asked Joe the same question.
And he said to me, and this was so interesting. He said, do you know how hard it is to disfellowship someone?
Now.
Because see, they knew that they were in a position, a situation where they don't want to start getting rid of people because they were losing people. And it's like, well, we want out. So it was in our control at that point. Very interesting.
And so for the congregation to know that Joe and Fran Guerino are no longer, I mean, that was like, it's as if saying the Pope is no longer Catholic, really. It's like people hold us in such high esteem.
Oh, we were examples just because of how exemplary the family was.
So they have a lot of tension. And our family, I mean, I'm sorry to say they suffered a lot from them because, their parents being disloyal. They think we've lost it. They've got all these reasons.
It's going to be a long lesson for all of us to learn, for all of us.
I'm so blown away. This is the first time I'm hearing your story full on, and geez, the fact that you literally straight point blank asked your son-in-law, like, I won't, or told him I won't support an organization that supports child sex abuse, and he said that he didn't do that. And it's like, you know what's going on here. And it's not just one person that came out with that. It's like so much. And then you told your daughter, and she said that it was not real. Like, again, and it wasn't like one documentary alone. This was like ABC, like really big people broadcasting documentaries, news that are talking about all this. Clear. So it's really sad that they're just really ignorant with all this.
The whole world knows in a way, but and so I said, well, we're going to start helping them to find out. And the one of the principles that it came very quickly to realize is that anyone associated with that organization will suffer loss. Everyone will suffer loss. The question becomes, what loss do you want to suffer? Because you can control whatever loss it is, but you have to come up with a strategy for controlling that loss. If you don't, you're going to lose more than you ever wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was August of last year that your daughter was in Pioneer School and that she did that. And then how shortly after did your other 3 children no longer speak to you? Like, and how far, I'm sorry. And then
they were all together.
They were okay. And was it around the same time that you guys got disfellowshipped or got publicly announced?
What happened first was that we had the warning talk, and then we went to the lawyer. We had our anniversary in October of last year, and our daughter, son-in-law, the one that we spoke with, and our son, they came to it, and they were very polite, but very cold, not their usual self. And I knew after that we weren't going to see them anymore. They basically came for the family to make a showing, and we did not see them. The only other time we saw them, my cousin passed away in March of this year. And again, the same, a daughter, son-in-law, and son came to the funeral home. And she came over to me, gave me a hug, and said, I'm sorry, Mom, because she knew I was close to my cousin. And I said, I really appreciate you coming. This means a lot to me. But instead of just talking to us, then they turned themselves away and talked to the rest of the family. And this is really sad, but Joe went to our youngest son, and our young, you were ready to hug him. And he said, you'll have to excuse me. And he said that to Joe. He let me hug him, but when Joe went over to him, he just said, no, you'll have to excuse me.
It just shows the level of indoctrination
Oh,
indoctrination.
it's horrible.
And to know that I was part of that, just at that point, it clearly indicated everything that I had to do afterward, that we had to do everything we could to help people to come to see what's going on.
Oh, and at one point, shortly after we told them about the ARC, we called our oldest son, and Joe was talking to him and trying to explain things. And what did he say?
And again, this shows
he's an elder.
This shows the point of view that the elders have. And I wanted to explain, and I began, and he stopped me, and he said, "The only thing I want to hear is," and I stopped him and said, "The only thing you want to hear? You mean I've got to tell you just what I should say that you need to hear? And that's all? That's what it's all about?" And at that point, I said, "Well, then we have absolutely nothing more to say." Because I wasn't going to play that game. It's like at that point, I knew they're just looking for compliance, period. Compliance or else. And it's like, I know enough. I knew absolutely enough what's going on. And honestly, I think he got the point too. But I think, like I said, it's one of those emotional things that you get stunned with him. I'm not talking about me. And that you take a long time to figure out what's going on, especially if you're not experienced.
Oh, he was the same one the night that they announced our disassociation. He texted us, and he said how much he loved us, and that they'd always be there for us. But he found, for him personally, that it was a security, that being in one of Jehovah's Witnesses was a security for him.
Well, he said he would derive comfort from it.
Yes.
That's what his words were.
And he appreciated us raising him in it. It was all positive things.
And at that point, I realized there's a level of emotional conflict that's going on that is so disorienting for them that it's going to take time for them to figure it out. It's going to take time.
Oh, and one other thing they did when we were first waking up, they wanted me to go to the elders and tell them. They said, just go to the elders and tell them what Pop, they call him Pop, tell them what Pop is looking at, because he knew that, he was checking things out. And I go, I'm not going to do that. I said, we had problems in our marriage, and I knew what that would do. I knew that right away, if the elders found out and they saw that I was going to go against Joe, that was going to be it.
Well,
and so we were a united front.
Yeah, basically the goal was you can get a divorce. You can get a divorce. It's like, what is this?
Our daughter had it all figured out. I could come and stay with them, and it's like, no.
It's like,
no.
Who taught you to destroy marriages?
No, it's not going to work that way.
So at that point, it's like, wow, we saw what we were up against and what they're involved in. And honestly, I don't think they do. I think they're in incredible blindness.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting because we came into the organization together. Matter of fact, we got baptized together and we walked out together. So we're very thankful. But at the time we were 70, and we said, we don't have a lot of time left, and we were in it for 36 years. So we've got to make up time. So that's why we started the activism and the and
Instead, can you get the letter that we wrote? First letter that we wrote from the lawyer.
From the lawyer, yes. I can.
It's incidentally, Vivian, one of the things. Now, just as an aside, right after the German bombing, the attack by that the witness on the congregation in Germany, I got really concerned as to what was going on with my family. See, normally our daughter, who lives relatively close to us, about 6 or 7 miles away, we would normally see her. Hadn't seen her for weeks, maybe months at that point. And at that point, I was getting a little concerned, if you know what I mean, for now knowing I have no idea what's going on with her. And calling, didn't get anything. Texting,
that
nothing.
Was right after the shooting in Colorado.
So then at that point, I thought, I'm going to call the troopers, state troopers, as if a missing person. I have no idea what's going on with her. So I did. I called them. It happened to have been a woman trooper, thankfully. And she asked, did you block your number? Says, I don't know how to block my numbers. And she explained to me how we can block our phone number. I don't know if you know. *67 blocks your, I didn't know that. But then she said, well, would you like me to call her? I said, yes. I didn't even think. Yeah. And she said, okay, you stay on the line. She called and then got back to me. And she said, well, I think everything's okay. She didn't want to talk. She said, because of family differences. And I said, I understand. And then I quickly explained to her, the trooper, what was going on within the witnesses, the problems that they're having, the bombing in Germany, the repercussions because of disfellowshipping and shunning, how it steals from people and robs people of their families, the way it makes them crazy, and payback, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, be watchful, be careful with this group of people. So it was an opportunity at least to do some awareness. So that was one of the things that was happening.
And that's where it all started for you guys.
Well, and that was just one of the things along the way. And it, I got the letter. Is this the one?
And this is explain what this letter is, if you will.
Now, this letter was when?
The one, it's our date is right on.
Yep.
It was October 14th, 2022. So just over a year ago, we went to the lawyer. This is the letter we had crafted. Is this the one you were thinking
There's
of?
another one.
Okay.
But here's the one. Yeah. It says, please be advised that our office, the lawyer, representing us, who are concerned about the future possibility of the organization and its managing members engaging in disparaging conduct towards them, including the making or publishing of potentially offensive, libelous, or slanderous statements. It says, we have informed, the Guerinos have informed them, the lawyers, of your practice of encouraging your members to cease all communication and contact with certain members in an activity which is referred to by your organization as shunning. The Guerinos hold their name, the name of their family and children in the organization of their business in high regard. As such, they would not like to see the Guerino name negatively impacted due to any such practice or other potentially disparaging conduct. And as loyal members of the congregation, Jehovah's Witnesses for many years, who have formed long-lasting relationships with their fellow members, the Guerinos respectfully request that you please act in good faith and extend them the common courtesy of not engaging in such conduct. As such, please let this letter serve as a polite yet firm notice that if your organization and its managing members do engage in any of the disparaging conduct described, it may result in us initiating formal legal action against your organization and or any responsible individuals. And so that's what we just so that at that point we had time to work with the family to see where they were at, so as not to get disfellowship right away and stop everything.
Yeah.
But then past a certain, is there something you wanted to jump in with rather than me go on?
No, I actually wanted to ask, what got you so deep into the activism work? And if you can talk a little bit about that right now, because I know you said you just came back from.
Well, this letter will help.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
letter,
exactly.
I think it will. It says we're dear friends. Now, this was after that, when we're just going to.
Again, if you can explain what this letter is from, and just,
this is from myself
so
to the organization. Okay. Just to let them know where we were at and our position. In other words,
when was this that you sent it?
This was after that first letter.
Was after that.
About how long?
Maybe about 5 months after.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're in the beginning of this year.
Yes.
Beginning
like February of this year.
No.
That was this was 2022, and 2023 we disassociated. So this was in between the lawyer's letter and the time that we disassociated. So maybe like
December?
maybe a month or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this was now for the next step. this was the next step, basically lays out the next step that we were going to take. Dear friends, we're very thankful to the Watchtower Society for teaching our family God's direction for us and the hope we hold for our lives and that of our friends and family. However, when a member expresses any questions about Watchtower policy, teachings, or directives, the member is met with potential discipline and frequently resulting in what is termed as disfellowshipping. Immediately, all members are directed to shun them, that is, effectively cutting off all communication with them. They immediately lose all physical, social, psychological, and emotional support that is critical to their health and welfare. This organizational practice of spiritual bullying has no place in a Christian congregation, let alone in civilized society. In glaring contrast, love directs us to show the kind of love and attention that Jesus displayed when he was present, loving them, not shunning them. We are actively raising awareness of the high rates of depression, suicide, and violence among our disfellowshipped and dissociated friends. They have been and are presently being shunned by all congregation members, including friends and family. We invite you to join us in displaying true friendship and raising awareness of this present human rights crisis. And Fran, finish.
We are finding much support in our community for the need to end this inhumane, destructive religious practice. Tragically, shunning produces victims. Therefore, the Christian principled practice of extending love and active support to those affected is what we are promoting. We invite you to share in the joy that this produces for all. Until the Watchtower Society makes the required changes, we are completely removing ourselves from any involvement in it. Our focus is on showing the needed love and care for all our friends. We invite all to share in this and to put an end to shunning immediately. Sincerely.
And that's what we sent as a prelude to the postcard that said we want our name to be to be announced. And we sent that to all the elders and the CO and to the friends that we knew, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, here we are a year later. What has your life been like in that year?
Filled with friendship.
Yes, very exciting. So we disassociated in January. We did the interview with Wendy in January, and as a result of that interview, because we put our number out there, we started to get a lot of calls, a lot of people, saying how they're being shunned and how much they enjoyed our story, how much it touched their hearts. They told us their story, and we started compiling names and phone numbers. And now we've got a directory of all different ages, different areas of the world. And we've contacted them. And what we do, our biggest strategy, is to connect them with others. So you mentioned the person in the beginning. He's in California, and we connected him with somebody in Massachusetts, Long Island, also California, and they talk for hours. All different people we connect. So we've done that.
Yeah. We're experiencing everything now that we never experienced in that organization.
You wanted to initially, you wanted to volunteer, so now you're volunteering and supporting in changing lives, essentially.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this is one of the biggest charity work that we could have found.
I absolutely love it. This map is epic. So go ahead, Fran.
Yeah, we went on a cross-country tour. Can you see it okay, or is it kind of shiny?
Oh, yes. We can see it beautifully. Yep, exactly. Bring it a little bit more closer to Joe. Closer to Joe. There we go. So we can see the whole map. There we go. Okay, so you can go ahead and explain exactly what this is.
Yeah, see, we are here. And we came down and stayed with some... one of the friends was who did an interview with Wendy Renee, put his phone number out. So we called him.
The very first one that we called when we were just waking up.
Looking for support that he was offering. He's become a true friend.
He
a
would
wonderful
call us
friend.
every day
Yeah,
to
yeah.
see how we were doing
Oh,
because
yeah.
he knew
Yeah,
the situation with our
yeah,
family.
yeah.
And he's been such a support. Well,
Yeah.
we went down to see him. That
Yeah.
was the first stop
Yeah.
in Alabama. And we got to meet his family. There was a brother that came over from
Beautiful,
Georgia,
just beautiful. Guys.
another sister from Georgia. So we
Yeah.
all met up
Yeah.
there on to, all these different states. And these are all ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. We stayed in their homes, or they took us out for a meal, or we all went out, and it was wonderful. When we got to California, that's where we had a big meetup in Huntington Beach. And it
I lived
was
there for 2 years.
You lived there for 2 years.
Did you?
I lived there for 2 years, from
Oh, my goodness.
2014 to 2016. How cool!
Wow. Well, that's
And
where
you,
we met up.
you, it seems like you met the most people there. Like, how many
Yes,
people
we
did you
did.
meet?
Yeah.
Like 8 people?
Yes, yeah, we did. Well, it was planned. We found a place where everyone could drive to and meet up. And it was just wonderful meeting
Yeah.
everyone in person. I'll
Yeah.
tell you, it's one thing to talk on the phone, but when you get to meet the person in person.
Oh, yeah.
So this was life-changing for Joe and I. We never did anything like this. And the friends that we met and the friendships are just, they call in the witnesses, they call them friends, but they're conditional friends.
Oh, it's all conditional associates. They're associates, not friends. And then one of the principles that just comes out to me, which we rely on, is that a friend is someone sticking closer than a brother. That's what a friend is, and that's what we're finding and establishing.
Here's an example of something that just happened. One of our exes was homeless. He had a whole situation where one thing wasn't working out, the job. He got in an accident and now he's homeless, and he calls us and he's down in Massachusetts, and we're saying, I said to Joe, oh, we could just go down and pick him up, and he said, no. He said he'll find his way, and he did. And a long story short, he ended up getting a job. Well, he ends up 10 miles away from us. Again, they didn't have a position. They dropped him off, and he calls us and he says, I don't know, I'm someplace in this place called Utica. I said, we're 10 miles. We'll be right there.
I grew up in Utica.
Joe's
right down
from
the
Utica.
street.
We said, we'll be right there. We're
right.
coming to pick you up. So he stayed with us for a week until he got on his feet, and they found a position for him. Went on the train, and now he's in Oklahoma City, and he's got a job. And it's just wonderful.
These are stories of success.
Yeah.
These are stories of friendship and success. And frankly, the friends are making it easy for us.
Yeah.
Because they're of that nature.
And he calls us mom and dad. We've got so many adopted children, like, your age and they're under, friends. And they're True friends. And we take them on as children, and we, take care of them and connect them.
See, the society was looking for people who were looking for something special. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were one of them, but they weren't delivering anything special. They were delivering. It was a bait and switch. Mm-hmm. They were looking for slaves, and they got slaves. They got us as slaves. Well, at that point, I said no longer, mm-hmm. especially the way they abused their slaves. So I said, no, we're out. And now we just wanted to be collected back together as friends who love each other.
And the other thing we do is a call-in program. So shortly after Wendy Renee's, in the summer sometime, we were listening to Rick Fearon, and he has a call-in program. He's been doing it for 18 years, nonstop every Saturday. Yeah. And we called in. And from that time, we would call in, and he said, you guys should have your own show. So every other Saturday, it's called The Outside Story. And
the reason why it's called The Outside Story, because I don't know if you know, Vivian, but there is at the Watchtower,
they do the Gilead graduation.
After the Gilead graduation, they have an interview of the Gileadites and a couple, and it's called The Inside Story.
And they interview this couple that, they're missionaries. So we went to bed that night, and well, Mikey was the one who pointed it out, and it's as
Oh yeah,
it's
that's another
got
thing.
symbols.
Just as a point, at the Bethel where they're located, they're sitting on the couch. On the wall behind them and above them, there's a pyramidal shaped symbol, which is Masonic, as the day is long.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh my God, these guys are showing their colors all over the place.
Yeah, so Mikey
At any
mentioned that
rate,
it was the outside, no, the inside
they're
story.
becoming more obvious as to what they are and who they are and what they're trying to do. At any rate,
We went to bed that night, and I said, Joe, I said, we can call ourselves the outside story because we're out. And that's what we did.
and helping people develop their
Mhm.
outside story,
Mhm.
not the inside story.
Right. You know,
An
how to
outside
get
story.
on from
Move on with their lives.
yeah, we interviewed different ones. Our first program, we talked about suicide in the Watchtower.
Yeah.
And then we did a second follow-up. The first one was so
It resonated with so
receptive.
many people.
Mhm.
There's so many friends that called in who had some experience of suicide
Yep.
in their family.
And we've interviewed Debbie Glander from California. She's a therapist. And then we just have other shows where we just talk about various things. So,
Yeah.
and
So this
as
is
a
a
result
podcast
of
you
that,
guys
we've
have.
met a lot of people.
Okay, this
I'm
is
sorry.
a podcast you guys have.
Yeah, it's a podcast.
Yeah,
It's on Rick
it's on Rick's
Fearon's
show.
on Rick's show
Yeah.
every other Saturday on the 6 screens, and so we're just a part
Okay.
of that.
Yeah.
Well, I will make sure to link that in the description box. In the meantime, before we hit record, you showed me a picture of your family
Yep.
with your kids. I would love for you to share that right now, if that's possible. Or is that
Maybe
something
we
you'd rather
should.
not do?
Yeah,
Okay.
we just don't know.
I
Well,
mean,
not for us, but for them
Yeah.
and their friends.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't know how
I
they
think we've
would
caused enough
accept
trouble
it,
for them. Yeah.
you know? I don't know how
I
they would accept
understand.
being used that way. You know what I mean? As much as we would love to.
Yeah.
You know?
I
But thank you
understand. I
for
was
asking.
There may be a time.
absolutely. I know they still love you. They're
Oh,
just
can you
as
say one other
brainwashed.
thing?
Yeah,
yes.
of course.
Oh,
we know that.
Absolutely.
We know that.
Vivian, the biggest concern we have is for not our loss, but the ones who are lost inside that organization, not knowing how to make a move out, and then wondering whether or not they would be accepted after they woke up at such a late date. In other words, if I was one of them, will I be accepted? And my attitude is they need to be invited. What we do has to be very inviting, accepting. And as I told them previously, I said, you know, as we get together again as a family, every one of us is going to have to be very forgiving for a lot of reasons. For a lot of reasons.
One other last thing, that the trip that we took, that was life changing, and then we just went to the protest, the Be Free 2023 in Washington D.C. And I'll tell you, that was
So good.
It was, everybody just bonded. It was so, because you've got YouTubers on there like Wally and Justin and Stephen Lett's niece was there, who lost her brother to suicide. There were so many that people already knew. And then when you got to meet them in person and get to hug them, and it was just so encouraging.
See, as much as a protest that it was equally, it equally showed the kind of love and relationships that we have being out as apostates. In other words, it's a total lie that our lives spin out of control if we leave that organization.
Yeah,
we bond in love. We become true friends.
Yeah.
So it was basically showing them it's not true what they say. It's just not true.
No, it was very peaceful, very dignified. Yep. Excuse me. At one point, I don't know if you know Selena Bertoloma. Okay, she's done some TikTok videos, and she was abused very early on, and we have been keeping in touch with her, but never really got to meet her. Well, she was standing right there, and I saw her, our eyes just, what did they do?
Locked.
They locked. Our eyes locked, and I ran over to her and I gave her the biggest hug. And I says, I'm so glad you're here. I was wondering if you were going to be here. And then she saw Joe and she went over and hugged him. And I said to Selena, you've got to get up there and talk. And because they had prearranged speakers. And then at the end, Justin asked if there was anyone that would like to say something. So Joe and I said we would like to, and we got Selena to say something. It was so good because it was all based on personal experience, whether being shunned, abused as a child, blood issues. It was just so good, and people were, they're emotional. It was so emotional.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Sounds like you guys are doing such a great job in the activism world and spreading the unconditional love that the ex-witnesses need.
That's
and
right.
the family that they need to,
Absolutely.
as far as the support system, which is, I feel like we're more bond together as ex-witnesses than we ever were as witnesses. The love that we have for each other is so huge. And as you said, it was just conditional love. Associates, as you said, we were calling each other friends, but we were associates. There's no friendship inside the organization. It's conditional love. Once you stop believing, once you say something wrong, they shun you. So that's not friendship.
No.
As you said, friends are there for you more than a brother. So I really like what you said there. With that being said, this has been a fantastic interview. Like I said, I'm going to try to plug into what we cut out.
I'm sorry.
I'm not the best editor, but I'm sure we'll make it work. Is there anything that you feel like you want to add to this interview that you missed out on?
Just the connections that we're making. Just to give you a really quick experience, what happened to us yesterday. So we have a sign out front that we can change the letters, and one of our signs said PMO and XJW and PMO meetups. Well, someone who drives by every day, goes to work, he messaged us and he said, I've been out for 20 years and I have never met an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and he wanted to meet Joe and I. So just yesterday he came over. It was on his way to work, and he was just so emotional. And he says, I read online and everything, but I've never actually met another ex. 20 years. I couldn't believe it. And now he's 40 and got a family and everything. He's moved on with his life. But he was just so excited. So they're out there, and
it's so important we find each, and that's one of the reasons why we wear these, just to connect with others that are out there, so that they see there are others.
I love that. I have found that a lot of the ex-witnesses are embarrassed to say that they're ex-witnesses, so they're just and I love talking to witness. Like, it's probably, if you're talking to me for more than 15 minutes, you're probably going to know I'm an ex-witness. And it's so interesting because a lot of people know people that are Jehovah's Witnesses or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And I met my ex-boyfriend was a Jehovah's Witness. I'm like, no way. So I love sharing the fact. I have no shame in that. I think it adds character to who I am. So to be ashamed of that is sad. So I think a lot of people are hiding the fact that they're a Jehovah's Witness or an ex-Jehovah's Witness because they think that that's too much of a mess of a human being for them to get new friends or whatnot.
And unfortunately, one of the motivations besides that is the fact that they're afraid they're going to lose their family or some other relationship.
Absolutely.
And that's so if you can help them get beyond that somehow. And what I tell them, I mean, this is a difficult decision. I says, you have to think very deeply about the losses that you think you might suffer. On the one hand, you've got your relationships, but on the other hand, if you live your whole life as a lie in that organization, then you've lost your authentic self, and you can't say that you lived a truthful life. And that's something not only you need, but you need to present that to others. And, it's kind of a heavy message, but it's a reality. So I say, each one of us has to develop whatever strategy to maintain, to prevent the deepest losses that we don't want to suffer. it really demands a lot. You know.
Exactly.
And Vivian, if anyone wants to get in touch with us, we give out our email, we give out our
And a
phone number.
I will
So-
add that in the description box when
Good.
you when I air this, and I think that will be
Okay.
later today. So we'll make that happen. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that will want to reach out to you guys.
Great. Thank you.
Of course. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to this interview?
We welcome everybody to join in the kind of work that see, the society taught us what we need to do in order to gain each other as friends. They taught us how, and they gave us the skills, and you just encourage everybody to go out and do that. In other words, draw attention to the problems that the witnesses are having, and on the other hand, bond with others as friends, and establish meetups, and do whatever you can to do what you can in your own little community.
Love that. Thank you guys so much for everything.
you.
Well, we want to thank you for
you.
taking time out and
Of
interviewing
course.
us, putting it out there.
course.
Thank you.
Of course. Thanks again for watching.